Right, the more astute among you might notice that this video isn't called Did You Know AR Talents or Guess What AR Talents or anything. It's just AR Talents. AR for assault rifle, obviously. The reason for this is I ended up sort of falling down the rabbit hole, and the more I looked, the more weird this got. And then I started looking into why it got weird, and then it made sense. And it then also became very quickly apparent that I can't just sort of go, this is the best talent, or this is mathematically the best talent, or this, that, or whatever. I just can't do it at all. There are kind of tiers that you could put talents in, but then a lot of the time this depends on the weapon. And a lot of them ended up becoming quite weird and wacky and convoluted. So because I've put a lot into this already, I'm going to be posting my findings in this video. A lot of it is based on math, and then it kind of went into, well, how does it actually feel on the weapon? How effective is it? What's the uptime I can get with this talent? Do I need to change anything in like the standardized build in order to actually get this talent to be more active? A good example of this is Sadist. Sadist, if you just make like essentially like the meta high-end DPS build and put Sadist on, assuming something is bleeding, Sadist is obnoxiously powerful. The problem is, in order to get something to bleed, you then are compromising something in your build in order to do that, such as using Ridgway's Pride, which you're then essentially losing a damage talent on your chest, which drops the overall DPS, and it just went nuts. So the build I was using for this on the stat sheet is my normal sort of standard DPS slash testing build. It is Dod City Holster, Fox's Prayer, Grupo Gloves, Providence Mask, the Gift, Backpack, and the Sacrifice Chest. And I use this as a sort of blanket throughout. This is my damage test stat sheet thing, blah de blah de blah. And then this is the order of their maximum output. The top half, where it's, if you see the blue FAMAS head upwards, is all headshots, and then FAMAS head down is all body shots. So in order, we have Sledgehammer hitting the head, Sadist, Eyeless, Ignited, Flatline, In Sync, Close and Personal, Optimist, Breadbasket, Strained, Killer, Ranger, Vindictive, Measured, and then a FAMAS without a damage talent, just hitting the head. The total difference between all of these is 23.08%, which is pretty hefty. From here we have body shots, Sledgehammer, Sadist, Ignited, Optimist, Strained, Flatline, Close and Personal, In Sync, Killer, Ranger, Vindictive, Measured, a FAMAS without a damage talent, and then Breadbasket, obviously, because it only affects heads or headshots. Now, not everyone's going to be as accurate as everyone else, so I've mixed them up. Well, averaged them out. I've calculated it so now that 50% of your shots will hit the head and 50% of your shots will hit the body, adding in some deviation, blah de blah de blah. And this is what I came up with. So, now we have Sledgehammer, Sadist, Eyeless, Ignited, Flatline, Optimist, In Sync, Close and Personal, Strained, Killer, Breadbasket, Ranger, Vindictive, and then FAMAS with no damage talent. Now this still comes in at a 23% difference. However, this is assuming that you have Sledgehammer procced on everything with the aforementioned build. It also assumes that Sadist is procced on everything, despite the fact that on this build I have no way to bleed anything. Same with Eyeless, Ignited. It's also assuming that everything is pulsed, despite the fact that I have no way to pulse things on this build. So then it kind of got annoying, because it's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to be able to accurately represent them on the build that would actually make use of them, and then calculate uptime of like how many times you're actually going to have sledgehammer procced, because it's grenades. You've only got a finite number of grenades. Yes, you can refill them, but it's not like you're walking around with an infinite supply all of the time. You're also unlikely to start throwing grenades at literally everything just to shoot it. You're more likely to sort of be like, well, actually, I'll try and save it for the chungers and the warhounds and the things that are actually a bit more of a problem, rather than be like, oh look, a red bar, I'll throw a grenade at it to shoot the damn thing. So this is when it then got really, really annoying. Yay. So this is then what I came up with. This is on a FAMAS. Optimist coming in first, flatline, then strained, killer, simply just because it's not active all of the time, whereas strained will be, and it ramps up. In sync, sledgehammer, breadbasket, close and personal, ranger, vindictive, measured, a FAMAS with no DPS talent, and then because I've had to put other things in order to consistently proc, sadist, eyeless and ignited, they ended up on the bottom of the list. But here was the problem. Every time I've done a DPS test comparing the AKM to a FAMAS with Optimist, and then an AKM with Strained, and then doing rolls vice versa, I have noted several times that on an AKM, Strained will always outperform Optimist, whereas on a FAMAS, Optimist will always outperform Strained. This is simply just due to uptime. Because it's 600 RPM, you're hitting your max stack on Strained after 2.5 seconds, and then you've got near enough another 2.5 seconds of maximum stack on Strained, whereas FAMAS, after another half second, you're essentially reloading. So the moment you hit max stack, you've got like, I think it's literally just under a second. It takes 2.5 seconds to hit max stack on Strained, and the total magazine from full to empty on FAMAS is 3.3 seconds. 3.33 if you want to get more precise. Whereas the AKM literally takes 5 seconds to go from full to empty. So you have a higher uptime on Strained, therefore Strained will outperform Optimist. So I did the test again on an AKM. And this is the order I came up with. Strained, Optimist, Flatline, Killer, Sledgehammer, In Sync, Close and Personal, Ranger, Breadbasket, Vindictive, Measured, AKM, Sadist, Eyeless, Ignited. Now just to do a cross comparison, sorry about my absolutely horrific editing skills, but as you can see, a few things have swapped around. Sledgehammer In Sync, Flatline, Optimist Strained, Measured is still basically rock bottom. Yeah. Now this revelation then just became too much work, because I've got to test every AR individually with every single damage talent, which means I've got to get a god rolled AR every single goddamn time with a talent that I can then move around, and adding a variety of different builds to find out what is eventually probably best in slot for each individual weapon. Luckily, that's actually what took me so long doing this damn video, and I have something for you. Now, this is done partly through math and to personal feel. So this is mostly just my own opinion. I've really got nothing to back it up on other than it felt good, really. And there's a bit of math behind it of actually being able to get some decent damage out of it. Now, the issue with all of this is depending on how you want to play, it's either really, really handy information for you, or it's completely redundant as of right now. By this, I mean that if you are a DPS player in a group and someone in your group is running a Pyro Eclipse build, I regret to inform you the best weapon that you can actually use is Pyromaniac, the named Police M4. Regardless of what your build is or how else you do it, blah 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 blah, simply just because you get a stupid amount of amplified damage to enemies that are on fire. Hopefully with an Eclipse player, everything's going to be on fire. Yeah, see where I'm going with this. So, just because I know a lot of people are solo players. Most of the time I'm a solo player. I have done this for solo standings, and I've not just done it for damage talents. I have looked at every talent available in the game. So in no particular order, weapon, FAMAS. Technically speaking, from a mathematical point of view, the best talent you can put on this is fast hands. You do enough DPS anyway. Burst DPS, sorry, I know people get angry at me for doing that. You do enough burst DPS anyway. However, the FAMAS's sustained DPS is lacking, getting them pretty even. Fast hands, then Optimist, then Killer. However, if you're playing in a group, I do not recommend Killer. Probably want to go with something like Strained. For F2000, the P for Perfect Optimist, meaning Shield Splinterer, best in slot. Killer, then Strained. TKB, Perfect Flatline, Strained, Steady-handed. This will help you with its weapon handling. Honey Badger, Strained, Optimist, Preservation. Police M4, Optimist, Killer, or Strained, unless you're in a group, in which case Pyromaniac. Cetar, Fast Hands, has the same problem as FAMAS. Optimist, Killer, AKM, Strained, maybe Steady-handed. Carbine 7, Strained, In Sync, Breadbasket. I'm aware Breadbasket seems like a weird one to put in here. However, Carbine 7 actually has a weird trick with Breadbasket where it's a very stable weapon, and although it is very accurate, it's just not accurate enough so that if you aim sort of high chest, low chin area, the reticule will bounce up and down, continually proccing Breadbasket on repeat. So in effect, you are going body shot, headshot, body shot, headshot, body shot, headshot. That's really hard to say fast. I wasn't even saying it that fast. So you actually, on Carbine 7, you can actually get a hell of a lot of effect from Breadbasket. Foul, Strained, Flatline, In Sync. G36, Strained, Optimist, Flatline. SIG 556, Strained, Optimist, In Sync. AKM, Military or Black Market, Strained or Steady-handed. PDR, Perfect In Sync, Strained, Optimist. P416, Strained, Flatline, Killer. The AUG, Perfect Allegro, Killer, Optimist. ACR, Strained, In Sync, Flatline, and then the MK16, Strained, In Sync, Flatline. These are just, although a lot of it, like I said, is based on math, it also really mostly comes down to personal preference. Although there is a huge markup that talents are able to give, the difference between them, like I said earlier, was like 23%. However, the majority of this is actually just going to come down to how you actually feel about X talent. Talents like Killer are really, really handy. It's a straight 40% increase in damage, however it's RNG based, so you have to get a kill with a crit. In solo play, this is very useful. And depending on the RPM of your weapon and the amount of DPS you've got, along with your crit chance, you shouldn't really have too much trouble, 1, obtaining this buff, 2, keeping it, at least for the duration of a firefight. However, in a group, Killer is not going to be that handy. 1, you can't always be the one shooting that target. 2, enemy health scaling also means you're going to have to put more damage into them to even be able to get to proc it. So in this example, Strained would be better in multiplayer, Killer is better in solo. However, there are just some weapons that will make more use of Strained over Killer regardless. Now, this is basically ended up being like a 15-minute video, and the end result is me saying I don't know. Optimist does seem to be like consistently the highest DPS talent, followed by Strained. Obviously, if you can proc Sledgehammer on everything, go Sledgehammer, but you can't do that, so yeah. Flatline ends up being a bit flat because you end up having to compromise a few things, either like through your build or your skills or even your attachments to even be able to pulse the target, which ends up being a more convoluted way of playing. Sadist, Ignited and Eyeless mostly end up being pretty bad. However, I do know in PvP they are very good talents, and mathematically they are. It's just the problem of trying to proc it in the first place. So yeah, I really don't know. I don't plan on continuing this for other weapons such as SMGs, etc, 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 just because it became so convoluted that I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore. I'm kind of lost, and the only reason I'm doing the video is because I planned on doing it in the first place, and I just kind of wanted to get something out to just sort of be like, there is like a tier list you could put these talents in, but then it depends on what build you're running. It then depends on what weapon you're running. Like, there'd be literally no point you running a Striker's DPS build with a FAMAS with Strained on. You're barely going to get the full benefit of it. So, I'm not sure where else to go with this from here. If you guys have any ideas, then go nuts. I've given the list of what I would recommend you put on the weapons, but as to whether you would agree with them or not is entirely up to you. I really don't know. I have talents that I like to put on my weapons, and there's like 4 or 5 of them, and I flip-flop between those 5 depending on the weapon. But other than that, I don't really venture too far into the weapon talents, just because, like I said, I've got my favourites. I've got my favourites that I know that will work. Like FAMAS, I always put Optimist on. F2000, I always put Preservation, Future Perfect or Optimist on, despite the fact that I've not put that on the recommended list. Honey Badger, I always put Strained or Future Perfect on. Like, yeah, I'm weird. I've got my own weird and wacky way of doing things. But yeah, have fun, good luck, don't die, I suppose. I don't know. This has confused me doing it this way. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one.